to Winning Isn't Easy. I want to talk about relapses that are found to drive disability worsening in the first years of a multiple sclerosis diagnosis and how that can impact your ERISA disability claim. I will tell you that people who have relapsing remitting MS can have a difficult time getting ERISA disability benefits because of the nature of the disease or their flares. Their symptoms will suddenly worsen with periods of remission where their symptoms can ease or even disappear entirely. Disability carriers are quick to take the position that during a remission, you're not disabled, you're not entitled to your benefits, and voila, we're denying the claim. So how do these relapsing and remitting episodes play into a disability carrier's hands? This can be confusing in that relapses can directly cause a worsening of disability, and you might have worsening symptoms or you might have new symptoms, and those symptoms, regardless of whether they're old or new, can last for a longer period of time after the relapse has ended. Or the whole MS disability picture can worsen independent of a relapse activity. So there's no apparent rhyme or reason to when the symptoms ease or disappear. That plays again into this issue of, are you disabled or not? And they're going to take advantage of the relationship between the nature and frequency of the relapses and flares, because they expect everybody's going to have a continuous longitudinal disability or progression. And life doesn't work that way. I think there's a recent study that is helpful in these relapsing, remitting MS claims, and particularly in the early years. This study shows an association between disability progression, relapses, and treatment, and it's called is a study that was published in Scientific Reports. Australian scientists analyzed data on patients' relapse activity and disability progression. And according to this article, which is found in Multiple Sclerosis News, dated July 31st, 2023, they say that relapses that occur in the first few years after the disease develops has a strong impact on the rates of disability worsening. But after 2.5 years, more relapses don't consistently result in a greater worsening of disability. So this study is showing that patients who have more disability worsening are likely to experience relapses and associations, and that doesn't change over time. The number of episodes that occur within the first 2.5 years of the MS onset are a strong indicator of the disability worsening. So how does that work? Well, obviously, you may not be quote unquote disabled under the terms of the policy when you're initially diagnosed. You want to work as long as you can and you're physically and cognitively able to do. But at some point as the disease progresses, you may be thinking about applying for your ERISA disability benefits. Obviously, it's important that you're reviewing your medical records to see what your doctors have to say. And part of that review involves a review of your report of the symptoms and how those symptoms are progressing, how often you're having the relapsing remitting episodes, whether there is a worsening of the old symptoms or those old symptoms last longer before they remit. It might be that you have new symptoms and you need to discuss with your doctor what those new symptoms are, how long they've lasted, and what impact that has on the old, if you will, symptoms that you've had. And you also are going to be wanting to talk about the impact of treatment that you are getting and what impact that's having on these episodes, how long they're lasting, not lasting, and any side effects of medication. Obviously, it's the frequency of these episodes that is important. It's documented in this particular study. So please give a very careful and thorough interval history, because we don't want the disability carriers to seize on a period of time in which your MS symptoms have relapsed as a reason to justify a claims denial. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of Winning Isn't Easy. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like our page, please leave a review, please share it with your family and friends. And of course, subscribe to this podcast. That way you're going to get notification of every new episode. I look forward to having you tune in next week for another insightful episode of Winning Isn't Easy.